Hi, I hope you have had a good Wednesday, and if you're currently enrolled, a good break from classes today. Faculty Development Day. Woo! Today, we're talking about computer science, more specifically, the computer science classes at North Seattle College, as well as to get you a little exposure on how coding works. So, if you're completely new to programming, and you're considering pursuing a degree in AD or CS, application development or computer science, you're in for a treat. In today's TechByte presentation by Raahil and I, we thank you for your valuable time in coming here. And I'll be giving an introduction to the path and then explain a simple concept. For some of you, this may be the first coding concept you come across. Then, Raahil, with a lot more coding experience than I, will apply and demonstrate the concepts that I discussed. He'll give you a taste on the basics of coding. Now, without further ado, let's get started. What is programming? Programming is just talking to computers. That's it. The end. Just kidding. Programming is the act of designing programs to solve a problem. Sometimes people are not aware they have a problem, like how the iPhone was made. Can you think of anything new? In order to program, you have to start by learning a language. We have Java and Python, which you may have heard of it being used in AI and ML. There's Ruby, Ruby on Rails, Go, Golang. It's developed at Google. There's LeetCode, a very popular one. And lastly, there is the C family. And that includes everything from C, C++, C Sharp, Objective-C if you're into Apple. Now, actually, one of them is not a programming language. Can anyone point out who the imposter is over here? Actually, the LeetCode is the imposter. This is actually a very popular platform where you sharpen your coding skills. When you're done learning, it's not a programming language, but you may want to keep this in mind as well. There are also different stacks to choose from. We have the front-end developer. This role ensures that website users can interact with the page properly, and they should try to make it smooth and pleasant to use. There's a good chance that you've been frustrated by how the website works. Sometimes you get pop-ups or in-your-face image saying, "Hi, do you want to buy our stuff for 10% off?" But you didn't even read a single word of the page. And if you want to get fired fast, then you can make the user enter their phone number by getting them to play a game of snakes. Then there is also the backend developer who ensures that everything runs correctly. Behind the scenes, if you're thinking rows and rows of servers in a data center, then you're actually quite right. Backend developers work on databases and applications. If you can do everything, then you transcend into the ether and become a full stack developer. Pretty simple, right? Front, back, and God tier. The use of programming is actually everywhere. Hi. Code is needed to push the pixels you are looking at right now. Not to mention the audio doesn't come free. The site that's hosting this video, as well as the Reddit posts that you were scrolling through in bed this morning. Why is the demand so high? Well, now you know. So, the class progression, let's talk about this journey. 3 classes. First things first, expectations. In the CSC trilogy, if you have no prior experience, it's not a bed of roses. Common knowledge among the industry is that many aspiring developers think that this field is actually very easy, but it's not. It's a lot of hard work, burning of midnight oil, hair pulling, crying, and towel throwing. When you take one class, odds are you want to take them all anyway. You need a 3.0 to progress to the next level. You cannot just pass. This is very important to know. 110 involves the Python language, and I'd say it's relatively easy for someone with no experience, just like I did. 142 and 143 involves Java. So to the uninitiated, this will get challenging very quickly. In my experience, I started to crack a little bit near the end of 142. Mind your summer course load, even two STEM classes alone can overwhelm you. If you're just about to start next quarter, you will encounter 143 during the summer. As you can already see from the slides, 86% grade is needed from 142 to enroll into 143. What's the workload, you ask impatiently? So I expect most of the time to be spent on projects, exams, and quizzes. Sorry, just a moment. One nice thing about programming is that doing the projects themselves inherently gets you prepared for the exams. So studying is actually not that much. Quizzes only form a small amount of the grade, and in most cases, they are on time. Yay! But I only had one shot at them, and this might be the same case for you. For many, this won't be an issue, but those aiming for high grade, the 5 to 10% from the quizzes can be a big problem. You'll be pressured to spend less time on it because of the lower weight, but you still be forced to spend a good chunk of time anyway because you need them. It's easy to actually fall behind projects. For 110, it's most of you guys might need 5, maybe 10 hours for each of them, and it's easy to procrastinate and do well. But this quickly changes to 20 to 40 hours for 142, and it's a bit worse for 143. That means you have to start a week early to have it fleshed out and to submit a good project. This is me reiterating, please mind the course load, especially if you are planning to take 143 in the summer. If you can take just one class, then it's definitely something to consider. Now, you may be also be tempted to procrastinate and skip certain good habits. I myself am guilty of this. In moderation, you will be able to get away with. In excess, well. Now, there's actually something you can get started working on today, and that's getting yourself acquainted with a fully fledged IDE. What's an IDE? It's basically a sandbox where you can write your code and get instant feedback. Not only will you make fewer mistakes eventually, you also code faster. This is something not introduced to me in 110 and 142, but when the whole class was using Idle and BlueJ, my usage of IntelliJ felt a little bit of an unfair advantage. Through 143, you will be expected to use IntelliJ, so might as well get started early. Sometimes you may make logic errors, and you learn about errors in 110. But logic errors are the worst kind of errors. Has anyone watched I, Robot? Or am I getting old? Skynet, supercomputers with logic problems, logic errors. Do your debugging. Logic errors make code look all right, but it runs wrong. So getting familiarized with debugging can save you many, many hours of pain. You will likely not survive at work without this basic skill. So let's start with the data types. In order to work with data, we need to know a few basic ones. Since they can be almost anything. Strings can be almost anything. So animal, bravo, you have been pwned. You need quotation marks for anything that's a string. And then we have integers. So small number, big number, negative number. Anything that's a whole number, integer. Then we have float. So floats are basically like integers, but with decimal places. Nothing too special about it. And then lastly, we have Boolean. This is a bit difficult. So. Hey, Raahil, your day going good?
Yeah.
So, can you walk on water like the rumors say?
No.
Oh, okay. So that's it. That's Boolean. It's just yes or no. But in programming, we replace it with a different word. So for yes, we change it to true. And no, you guessed it, false. That's it, true or false. Capiche? Now, there are a few more things in 110 that you will be seeing, such as list, tuple, and range, but we'll be covering these four today. Now, in order to work with data, they must be stored. So they can hold a piece of data. They can be changed using many operators and functions. And they can be used to compare between two variables. And that's just a start. So is 2 larger than 3? False. Oop, that's a Boolean. Pretty simple, right? Okay, so now I will draw for you to explain visually how a variable works. Okay, this is my little drawing pad. Okay, so in order to put something in a box, you need a box. So this is my little box here. Nice, right? And let's say if I have a string, say hamster. Remember quotation marks? So strings must begin with a letter, and after the letter, only numbers and letters. And you cannot use a keyword that already exists in Python. So what are keywords? You'll find out later in class. So I will take this, open up, then I put the hamster inside. Oops, like that. Okay, so I put a hamster in a box. So this is called binding a variable. So the variable has been bound. And I need to give a container a name as well. So um, container, let's call it like like Elon Musk, what he calls his kids. Um, but you cannot use weird things like this. So let's just use something normal. Just put animal. That's it. So hamster in the container animal. So how do you write? Animal, oops, equals hamster. And this is how you can do it in your IDE. Now, you may be wondering where can I see these data types in action? So if you have played a game, then maybe you might be familiar with something like this username equals to, let's say, Tom, class equals to mage. Like a game, and let's say magic level LVL equals to 99, max damage equals to maybe 22,500.51, something like that. And maybe we don't know whether Tom has been banned or not because lots of people get banned in games. So is banned equals false. So let's hope it stays that way. And yeah, that's about it for variables actually. Pretty simple. All right, so oops, sorry. In 142, that's where you see the variables working together at the same time. You can create an object and ask it its magic level or its name, and it return you what you want. And you can also set a certain string or an integer and do whatever you want with it. And in 143, you even know how to turn data types into something of a wildcard using generics. So this will all take place with object-oriented programming. So here's a little drawing I made to show you how far you can go with these three classes. So you put a hamster in a container at the start of 110. Then later you learn to put boxes in boxes. Then next you learn boxception from 142, and then boxes that grow and shrink as and when things are added or removed to it at the end of 142. Then at 143, I'm learning this right now and it's super weird. So yeah, you can imagine. All right. Thank you. Now it's your turn, Raahil.
Awesome. So I'm basically just gonna walk through how to use those concepts Aaron just taught us to make a really simple Mad Libs program. So if you're not familiar with Mad Libs, it's basically that game that people play where you ask your friends for some adjectives and nouns, and you fill them in like a pre-written paragraph, and it tends to have some funny results generally. So actually, writing one of these is super duper simple. So what we're gonna learn four more things on top of what Aaron has already taught us. So the first thing we're gonna learn is input input, and so with the it's called a function basically. It's called the input function, and you put a string in between these two things called parentheses, and the input function basically asks the user what you put in this string. So for example, if you said um, how was your day, and the user types in maybe uh, good. So then this input function would do what's called returning, or but really you can just think of returning as evaluating too. So this input, you can just imagine that it gets replaced with just good. Um, the other thing we're going to learn is something called print, and that also takes a string. So you can see, for example, if I write print hi and I run this program, we just get hi out in the console. So really all it does is it just prints out into the console whatever you put in here. So now with this, we can get both user input and output. And then the other things that we're gonna learn are super duper simple, and you don't need to worry about them too much. But basically, it's converting a string to an integer and an integer to a string. And this is just so that we can do math and then print it out again. Because you can't, like, in Python, you wouldn't be able to add, like, you wouldn't be able to multiply, like, hi with, good, because that doesn't make sense. It doesn't, it's just not logical. So what you have to do is you would have to convert it into an integer. And for this to work, they have to have actual numbers in it. So the Python, this looks the same as something like hi. So you have to convert it to an integer so that Python knows that you're just working with the number 34, basically. And then the string function does the exact opposite of that. It converts a number to a string. And in this program, the first step we're going to have to do is welcome the user. So let's do that really quickly. What we're going to have to do for that is just say print hello, welcome to my Mad Libs game. Now all this is going to do is it just print out, hello, welcome to my Medless game to console. Easy peasy. Okay, and then from there, you're going to want to create some sort of output, right? We want to print something out to the console. We want to print out some paragraph that we fill in. So let's think about what we want to print out. Maybe we want to print out name, bought, some number of some noun for maybe some number, and we'll call this some dollars, some number of dollars each, and then we want to tell them also how much it totals, just because it's a good exercise in learning how to do operations, and also because that number can get really insane sometimes, so it could be funny. And so we're going to just say we're going to total sum. All right, so now looking at this, we can see that we need to get 4 things from the user. We need to get the name, the number, the noun, and then another number from the user. And then we need to calculate the sum on our own. Okay, so let's do that. So we're going to go name is equal to, and remember, we can take the input function and say input, what's a name? Or we'll just say, give me a name. And that way, now we can say, maybe Bob. And from here, we now have that stored in this variable name. And if you remember, it's like Aaron said, you basically just have a box that's been labeled name, and that stores whatever this input evaluates to, which is Bob, right? And so now we need to get a number. So we'll call it number 1 because we know we need to get 2 numbers. So we'll say first number, right? Input, give me a number. Oops. Give me a number. And then we'll say noun equals input, give me a noun. And then we'll say number 2, because remember, we have to get 2 numbers, and containers can't have the same name, otherwise we won't know what container we're talking about when we use their names. It's like if you have 2 boxes named number and someone says open the number box, they're not going to know which box to open, so you have to name one box number 1 and the other box number 2. So we can say give me another number. Okay, and now we want to calculate our sum, right? So how are we going to do this? Well, maybe it's not really a sum. I guess it's actually more of a product, because you're multiplying 2 numbers, right? Because you have to multiply the price by the number of objects. So we're going to say product is equal to number 1 times number 2. Now, here's the issue with this. Well, actually, first, let's just test it and see what it does. We can just print out the product and see what happens, right? So if I say name Tim to noun cat 5. Okay, so we get this error, can't multiply sequence by non-int type of string, right? So basically what this is saying is you can't multiply a string by a string. That doesn't make any sense. So that's because Python doesn't know that these are numbers. So we need to let it know that each of these are actually numbers. So we use this integer function that I talked about up here. And you just type in int like that. And so now this evaluates to number 2's number form, which would have been 5. And this evaluates to number 1's number form, which would have been 2. So it basically just converts the string into an integer and converts the string into an integer. So now if we run it, we can say, give me a name, Tim, 2, cat, 5, 10, right? So now we can see that that actually worked. But this isn't really what we want to print. We don't want to just print the product. We want to be printing this whole paragraph. So let's Control X that and print it here. And so you might be tempted to just call it done here, but it doesn't know where name and number and noun and number and product are. It doesn't know what they are. So what we're going to do is instead, we have to let it know to use the variables. And you might be tempted to say, oh, wait, how can you add a string to a string, right? And so really in Python, it uses the same plus sign for adding numbers to each other, but it also does it for adding strings to each other. And adding strings to each other really just means if I have a string like hi and my name is Billy, if you add those two strings to each other, you just get hi, my name is Billy. It just puts the two strings together and you get one nice simple string. So let's do that again here. And you can do this any number of times in the middle of your a string. You can have as many of these as you want. So this one's number 1, right? And then we want our noun. So that's just noun. And then we want our second number. And then, oops, why are we having an issue here? Oh, I missed a plus sign. Here we go. Okay, and then we want our product. But, well, let's see if this works. We can say, give me a name, Tim. Give me number 2, cat, 5. Oops. All right, what happened here? So can only concatenate strings. So when you add strings to each other, that's called concatenation, which is just a really fancy way of saying jam two strings together. But what's happening here? Well, we know the product is an integer, right? Because we did an integer times an integer. So of course it's going to come out with an integer. That's just how math works, even. So we can't just put an integer on the end of a string. We have to let Python know that, hey, actually, I want you to just treat this like a string. So we put the str function around it. So from here, we can run it again and see what happens. We can say Tim, 2, cat, 5, and Tim bought 2 of cat for $5, each totaling 10. Okay, so that sentence reads really weird, right? Well, okay, what's the first issue here? 2 of cat. That doesn't sound right. So what we want to say is instead of that, we want to say 2, and then we want a plural noun, right? Because we're getting multiple. And then we want to say for $5 each, and then we want a comma here, or a semicolon. I'm not sure. I'm not an English major. So, okay, Tim, 2, cats, 5. And now this makes a lot more sense. Tim bought 2 cats for $5 each, totaling 10. There's still an issue here, though. We need 2 cats. We need a space between the 2 cats. And yes, Beck, I think you are correct. I am not good at grammar. They never taught us semicolons in school. And now we are having an error. Oh, I think I just had a bad character there. I don't know what that was. Okay. Each totaling, and then we need a dollar sign here. And that That should be everything. Hopefully it works this time. Let's say, do you guys want to give me a name this time? All right, I guess we're doing Beck since Beck said that first. A number? 15. A plural noun. Pickles. All right. And then another number. 90. Awesome. So Beck bought 15 pickles for $90 each, totaling $1,350. Those are some expensive pickles, Beck. I don't think that is a good decision in terms of money budgeting. Yeah, I think they definitely have to be at least yeah, definitely gold plated at least. I don't know if that would still cover it, to be honest. All right, well, that's a super duper simple, easy program. And if you look at it, without all of this extra space and stuff in the middle, all we really ended up doing was writing 7 lines of code. And we have a fully functioning interactive program. So that's super cool. Anything to close up, Aaron? Or are we good?
I think you covered it well.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming.